All right. Okay. So we are going live. I'm figuring this thing out. Welcome to day 2 of the Why Your Podcast Appearances Aren't Paying You series. Now, today we're going to talk about why your podcast introductions and the stories or lack thereof that you're telling on your podcast is actually making you lose the listener and potentially even lose that client that could have come from your podcast introductions, podcast interviews, all the things. Welcome, and my name is Carolee Moore. I am the founder and CEO of the Podcast Pitching Society. I'm also the host of the Currency and Visibility podcast. I have personally closed nearly $100,000 in contracts with less than a year from no ads, no viral moment, no big audience to speak of. I've done all that through podcast guesting alone. And so I've actually created a system that we now use for our clients to do the exact same thing. They're closing multiple 5-figure contracts. These are all things that I've not only proven, but we have video testimonials for all that. So we do this, okay? People have been selling their books like hotcakes. You have email lists exploding from all of this, including ours. So definitely, when I tell you I know what I'm talking about, please understand. And why am I doing all of this? We have a masterclass that's coming up, right? So this series is actually a preamble, if you will, or preview, whatever, of what we're going to be talking about there. What's different in that environment is that you're going to be able to ask me questions. You're going to be able to come with your specific questions, especially if you have an upcoming show that you're trying to get prepared for. You're trying to get your story straight or more compelling or whatever the case may be. You want to be in that room. You want to be able to ask me the questions live so you can get your coaching live in there. That is going to be an amazing space for you. That particular masterclass is called Podcast Placements That Pay. And I am super excited to be in the room with the folks that are there. So I hope to see you there. Now, let's get into what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing I want to talk about today, as it relates to the stories that you're telling, and I want to say before I even jump into this, your story is not too boring. It's not too dramatic. It's not too anything. A lot of times when we listen to podcasts, and especially when we're listening to, the Mel Robbins of the world, like the folks that she has on, you're like, oh my gosh, they were like homeless 5 times, like got shot 20 times, like crazy stories. Like, well, my story is not like that. Like I grew up in a 2-parent household, went to like a really good school, live, with my husband. Now we have the 2.5 kids and all the things. What about my life could be dramatic enough for someone to care about it? And I say this, you at some point had to make a decision. You at some point had to pivot, even ever so slightly. Maybe it's a situation where you were groomed to be a certain way and you decided at some point in your life, I'm not going to do that. And that actually impacted what you do for work now or whatever the case may be, right? It is absolutely possible for you to mine your own story. When I say mine, it's like dig and excavate that thing to find the pieces that are human level connections. And that's where you want to tap into and then start to grind, because your expertise, and this is the first part, is not enough. And a lot of people who have done a lot of things and have gotten, not even done a lot of things, but you've gotten a lot of degrees. You have a lot of letters behind your name. You've gotten certifications on top of certifications, and you have done enough in your industry in terms of all the letters behind your name to show I'm that woman, I'm that guy, right? Fantastic. I'm gonna tell you one thing. Other human beings, they don't care. They don't care. And when you're pitching for a podcast, I'm gonna tell you that too. Don't care. Like, your degrees don't mean anything to me as a podcast host until you can connect why it matters. So the question of what's in it for me needs to be answered. And it's not going to be a level of I went to Harvard and got this degree. That's fantastic. That's awesome, right? What is going to make it awesome is I went to this incredible Ivy League school. I did all of the things, right? And because of that education and what I learned and what I've done in the field, I've come up with this truly unique, truly innovative, different, off the beaten path, whatever perspective that is so different from what the rest of my industry is doing. I am now sharing this with you so that you're aware, hey, everything that you've been told is a lie, right? Yeah, you've been told cheese is great. It's actually like, whatever. However you approach it, you absolutely are going to, pop your stuff. Like you got them degrees, so don't hide them, but don't lead with them. Lead with the impact. Lead with, hey, because I have done all the things that I've done, because I've accumulated all of these experiences, you can listen to me when I tell you, hey, this ain't it. There's a reason why at the beginning of my own lives, I've decided I'm not just going to tell you my name and tell you where I work. I'm going to let you know that I've made real money from podcast guesting, and I've actually helped other clients make real money from podcast guesting. And because I've done that and I have proof of that, you should listen when I tell you, hey, you want to make sure that your stories are actually like captivating and compelling and how to do that. So one of the ways to not lead with your accomplishments, especially in the introduction, is to talk about your actual story. Now, I'm going to give you some tips on this for storytelling. There's an arc. There's a reason why I'm super annoying to watch a movie with most times. There's a certain person I don't want to comment on that. If you listen to that has watched a lot of movies with me, because I can immediately within the first 5 to 10 minutes, and 10 minutes is if it's a really good movie, I could tell what the rest of the plot is. I could tell what's going to happen. I could tell who the villain is. I could tell who did it for the most part, because there's a formula. And there's nothing wrong with using formulas. The reason why it's a formula is because it works and it's repeatable. So don't try to recreate it. Use it. What is that formula? You are on a path. Some kind of friction happens. Some transformation happens. And then because of that transformation, now you're off to do amazing things, right? That's what I need you to kind of think through when you're introducing yourself. It is not my name is Carolee Moore, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Podcast Pitching Society, and we help experts to, get on. Honey, in 2 seconds, we're gone. We're done. Hang it up. If I start off by saying, I was born on a sunny island in Jamaica, and a huge part of our entire culture is storytelling. And I became fascinated with the incredible storytellers in my family, the folks that could make people laugh, the folks that could, at the same time that they're making fun of you, make you laugh. I'm telling stories and I'm weaving from the beginning as I talk about my college or my early career or whatever. I'm weaving in the idea of, hey, I'm a storyteller. And so by the time I'm done and I tell you what I do, that I help other people tell better stories so they can make money, I just showed you through my introduction that I actually do what I do. If you are someone who help people with financial literacy, you need to tell your broke story. You need to tell the story of listen, I followed all of the instructions of what I thought I was supposed to do, right? I was supposed to save or whatever the case is. Or maybe it's I was terrible with money. Had a bankruptcy, did all kinds of stuff the absolute worst way. And because of that, and I had to dig myself out of that hole, I learned some things. And through learning those things, I actually recognized that a lot of the things that we were being taught was just wrong. And now I help my clients. There's a connection there that's a human level connection that is not about the fact that you are a professional financial I don't know what the certification is for that. You get what I'm saying? Great that you have those certifications. Amazing. What does that mean for me? What's in it for me? What do I get? So I am sitting and I'm parked in this particular point because it's super important. And unfortunately, a lot of times we lose that. Okay. And storytelling, speaking, public speak, they're all skills. You can practice and become better, right? There are things that you're able to do over and over and over and over and over again, and then you just become better at it. There are still podcasts that I go on that before I get on there, I actually practice my story because I know, one, it's a bigger platform, or I know for sure, like, they're going to have a lot of fantastic potential clients, prospects, et cetera, listening. If I know that already, then I need to get myself so prepared that when I get on the podcast, it just feels flowy and natural, and I'm not super nervous the way that I would be if I'm just winging it. Okay. So I want you to think about your expertise as a additional extra amazing part of the cake, but it's not like the substance of it. Okay. You need it for it to taste good and for fantastic, but think of it like an icing, right? It's just the thing that makes it sweeter. It's not the main thing that people are really connecting to. People connect to people. So that's the first piece of it. But you have to be strategic in your stories, right? Now, point number 2, you're skipping pieces of your story, glossing over some stuff because either it makes you uncomfortable or you don't think people would care about that or whatever the case is. And I gotta tell you, like, that's where the money is. That's where the connection to the person who's like, man, she or he sees me. Like, you get it. Oh my God, thank you. That's really the part that I genuinely enjoy the most. And I'm going to give you a little example. I shared it on my socials. So if you follow me, you probably have seen me post this, maybe. I share parts of my story from my early entrepreneurial journey on my podcast when I talk about my personal journey, right? Not every podcast is going to ask you about that. Not every podcast is about that to begin with, right? But there have been times where I've talked about what it took to build 2 6-figure businesses in like the span of 3 years. Given that most businesses don't make 6 figures ever. Very, very few, actually. And then you put on there Black-owned business, even fewer. Put on there Black women-owned businesses, even fewer. I've done it twice in a short amount of time. That is the thing that I think everybody would, yay, you made multiple 5, like, it's all in the celebration of it all, right? You can absolutely see how you'd want to lead with that. Here's the thing. If you know that I moved across the country from Boston, Massachusetts to Dallas, Texas with enough to pay for 1 month's rent and like groceries, kind of. If you knew that my appliances in my apartment were paid for through a Bed Bath & Beyond registry from a women's group that I was a part of, and my cutlery and all the things was from a dollar store, didn't have a bed for like a couple of weeks, didn't have furniture, anywhere to sit other than my 2 little chairs for months. If I don't tell you that story, if I don't tell you about my car being repoed, if I don't tell you about the fact that I had to stand in line at the food pantry many times, if I don't tell you that, then when I tell you that I've made several 5 figures in one day, that I've made more in one day than I made in my entire first year of being an entrepreneur, you won't know how big of a jump that is. And so it doesn't hit the same. So you're out here talking about your greatest hits. And you're wanting people to even though you might not say that, you're proud of what you built. Absolutely. But here's the thing. If there is no, again, friction of like, hey, our hero is in trouble. How did she get down for a cow? She's watching her car that she almost paid off, like right off into the sunset. What's she gonna do now? Right? Imagine it's a movie. I don't care that you found the love of your life if I don't know that y'all had to go through a whole bunch of stuff to even find each other, to then go and grow. It is the friction that brings the connection. It is the experiences that you're trying to bury that you believe is not good enough, that you might not even have healed from yet. And I want to put a huge asterisk next to this, okay? Because I've been in therapy. I've been open and honest with my friends. I have healed through some of the things that I can now open and honestly share. If I had not, I wouldn't be sharing it publicly. There are things that I will not share publicly until I have healed from them. And if you're not close to me, you won't know, because it's not serving a purpose. For folks to know that someone built a really successful business on paper, did not necessarily build a successful life as the owner because I didn't know any better. And so I burnt out, and I actually was not the highest paid person on my team in my first business. Crazy, right? If I didn't go through all them experiences, I don't believe, I know I wouldn't be the kind of business owner I am today. I know I couldn't talk about visibility in the same way that I talk about it now. I have a small audience, but not because I'm doing something wrong. It's because I built my entire first business off of social media. And so I could pop my stuff a little bit because if you can make that much money not using social media at all, when I tell you about podcast guesting, when I tell you about email, when I tell you about all this other stuff, believe me. And I can do that because you see the line. But if you are not healed, then it's hard for you to talk about that beginning piece. It's hard for you to talk about where things have come from without tearing up, without, emotionally vomiting on people a lot. If that's the case, honey, do not share something with the world just because you feel like it's going to garner sympathy or, trauma bonding, in other words, right? You really want to tell your story from a place of victory, in the sense that you've already overcome the emotions that's connected to the thing that you've gone through. And you're now on a different level where you can help somebody who is where you were, right? And that's like the power of this. And a lot of times people have started their business because whether it was them or a family member or a friend, they've gone through something that they're like, that's not right. That needs to be fixed. There has to be a different way. There has to be a better way, right? That's why we start businesses. That's why entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs. You see a problem and your solution is not to complain about it until, the day is long. Your solution is like, let me go and figure out how to do this better because they're tripping, right? As an entrepreneur, you are wanting to help people. And the biggest way for that to happen, especially as a service-based business owner, is to showcase that you've gone through the stuff. Okay, that's point number 2. And hopefully that was helpful for somebody in understanding your story is absolutely the thing that's missing, right? And I have to be honest, me sharing my story and having people respond oh my gosh, she's so resilient. I can only imagine what it took to mentally get through all of those experiences to then build something successful on top of it. That's incredibly and crazy, whatever. And for the longest time, I hated that word. I hated oh my God, you're so strong. You're so resilient. It was kind of I don't want to be patted on the back for surviving stuff. I don't want to be oh, You're like, I don't know. I had my stuff around those words because I wasn't healed from what I was going through. And every time someone said it, I felt tears, building up in the back a little bit. Because I was like, well, dang it, I'd rather not be strong. I'd rather just have a better life. I'd rather not be broke. I'd rather not. And so I had to get over that. But it's really amazing now in the mental space that I'm in when I hear people come up to me and say, or I have seen people write in reactions to podcasts that I've been on in the comments, oh my gosh, I can't, she's incredible for going through all of that and still finding a way to dig deep and build something else. That's crazy. And sometimes you don't realize too, your story, as much as it might be normal to you, it might feel like, well, doesn't everybody? No, they don't. No, they don't. Shouldn't everybody know? Yeah, they should, but they don't. They don't. And what you might see as your average, your normal, is someone else's extraordinary. So I would love for you in this moment to recognize that not only does your story matter in this kind of cheesy, your story matters, but literally it matters to someone else who is at the starting point of where you had come out of. They're still there. And they're wondering, is there anyone that could help me out of this place that I'm in? I need something. I need someone. I need a solution. Oh my gosh. And you're over here, mouth closed, not saying nothing. And they're over there begging for help. Somebody, please. And all it takes is for you to just simply share your story. Hey, I've been there. I know what you're going through. I got you. I've created this thing that's uniquely for you. Life change. How do I know? It's happened to me. I saw my coach on an Instagram ad, which I never respond to ads ever. But her messaging was Black service-based business owners. I'm a Black service-based business owner. So I'm like, perfect. Went to the event. But before I went to the event, I researched and I listened to all the stuff that she put out there. I really wanted to understand who this person was because from what I saw and what I heard, she was speaking my language. She was talking about me like she knew me and what I was going through. And I've spent close to it's probably more than 60K at this point on coaching with that particular person because she saw me. Oof. I almost got me. We ain't gonna cry today, okay? But when people feel seen by the messages that you're sending because they're authentically coming from a place that is within you, that is connection. That is connection. That is the power of podcasting, honestly. Because it just gives you more time to do that. Okay, point 3. Conflict is not weakness, it's credibility. And I really, really want to drive home this point. I touched on it a little bit as I was on my rants. But that friction, that little, or that not that little, but sometimes really big moment is where people, even if they can't fully relate to that specific thing, the lesson that you learned, the person who you became, right? In that, it is going to be someone's mission, hope, dream, whatever, to get to that level, to get to that point. And you doing it gives them the idea of, oh, I can do that too. Okay? I'm going to give you an example. We had a client who dropped out of school in the 4th grade because his parents gave him the option to do that. And he decided, I don't want to go to school no more. Dropped out. And it wasn't a romantic story of I dropped out in 4th grade and, found out that I was, a genius and went back to school. And the man got his GED never really went to high school like that. Got his GED, and eventually worked his way up and got his PhD. Dropped out in the 4th grade, got his PhD. And while he was getting his PhD, he was also becoming a Green Beret. Oh, and while he was doing that, he was also becoming an FBI analyst. Dropped out in the 4th grade. Now, someone who is a dropout, who got their GED, who is trying to figure their life out, can hear that story, and it hits different from a corporation that's potentially trying to hire him to consult, because his whole concept that we developed together was this idea of big decisions. How do you make really big decisions? He had a framework for that because of all of the big decisions he had to make in his life, right? But same thing, personal connection. Someone who is just like, man, I want to understand life-wise, how do I actually go from feeling like I'm just not good enough? I dropped out of school, I got my GED, and now it's like, well, what do I do? There is a lesson in his life, the same way there is a connection to someone who's trying to hire him for corporate. And you have to remember that in your story are those two things all the time, right? This idea of you're a person and you have personally gone through some things. And just as you were going and getting your law degree and going and getting, becoming a physician and doing all these amazing things, you were becoming a particular kind of person through that process as well. Don't forget that part. Talk about you went through anatomy and physiology. You did all of those things, the literal kind of technical part of your career, etc. But like, you as a person also went through some things. And that's the part that I have seen, because it's no longer I believe. I have enough data now, both in my clients and my friends, and in some cases, even in my own life, where it's so much easier for us to talk about the conflicts within career. And like, man, yeah, they didn't want me to be, I didn't get that promotion because, and you can talk about that all day. What about talking about what about excavating? I'm gonna use that word again because I like it. How you felt during that process. Okay. Example, if you're and I'm gonna use one of my clients, B2B consultant who is also helping executive women and some men not only tap into their power, but understand how their leadership can impact their entire organization if they fully tap into who they are as people, right? If that is the work that you're doing, then obviously you've also done that work on yourself. You've had to go through that entire experience. So you could talk about your experience in HR. You can talk about your experience like in corporate America in a almost clinical way. But when you start saying what I've experienced myself and how I felt during that experience, I felt not only overlooked, I felt devalued. And you start naming emotions and feelings, honey, the connection that is possible versus, this person was a VP and I'm a VP. That's cool. Like, that is a connection. People will connect to that. But if you start naming some things, when I talked about earlier, my coach seeing me, it wasn't just like, she works with experts. Her whole entire platform is to really help credentialed, right, highly educated experts use that expertise to actually make money and be better at sales. Great. That's not what I saw. That's not what I heard. That's not what got me in. That's not what I meant by, she sees me. When she's talking about how it feels to be this well-credentialed and you still not making the kind of money that you need to, you need to be making. Like, that's the stuff that's like, man, yeah, you're right. Because you start pulling on the heartstrings. So conflict, AKA the stuff that you've been through, the ways in which you have felt, the person that you had to become to accomplish the things that you have in your life is equally as important as the things that you've accomplished in your life. Matter of fact, I would argue it's more important. And a lot of times we try to skip over that. And I don't know why. It's probably because we have this obsession with perfectionism now because we're in the age of social media. But I cannot stress enough, like, it is not the time to shy away from what makes you fully unique. And the one thing that you could say for sure, there is not another you. And it's only because of your experiences. It's not because of the letters behind your name. There's a bunch of people with the same letters and possibly even more, right? So the story that you're telling yourself is just as important as the story that you're choosing to tell others. With that being said, your homework, like I told y'all yesterday, I'm a teacher. That's my core is there. The homework for today is I want you to think about the most pivotal moment in your life. That moment that changed almost everything for you, right? If you are someone who is in the healthcare field or whatever the case is, it could be when a loved one got sick and went through the system and you realize how jacked up the system was and you're like, we got to do something about this, right? What was that pivotal moment that changed your life and then altered like what you actually focused on in your career? And I want you to think about and maybe even write about who you were before that moment happened. How would you describe yourself, right? Who did that moment call you to become? Who did you have to become in order to handle that moment, right? I want you to think about how you had to pivot in mindset, maybe even physically, location-wise, whatever it is. Who did you have to become in that moment? And finally, who are you now because you've lived through that moment? That's the homework. Who are you before that pivotal moment? Who did you have to become in that pivotal moment? And then who are you now? Because you've gone through that moment in your life. Awesome. Right. So again, we are having this masterclass on I would say March 4th. And it is going to be amazing. Like I'm not kidding you. You already see, right? This is just like surface. The icing, if you will. That's not really, no. It's surface, okay? We're going to get into much deeper stuff on the masterclass. There are things that I don't share necessarily public. We're not doing a replay. I'm just going to be honest. There's stuff that is proprietary that we use within our agency that I'm only sharing in that space. And I want to help you. So if you've been trying to figure stuff out when it comes to your story and you're still not really 100% sure it's there, this is what I've been doing. Brand messaging has been a thing for forever. And so I would love for you to bring all of your stuff, right, to the masterclass next Wednesday. I believe it's next Wednesday. Lord, help me if it's not. Y'all, don't say nothing if it's not. But March 4th, I'd love to see you there. Come register. The link is in the comments, I believe. And I will see you tomorrow for day 3. Bye.